This is TWiT.
It's been interesting. Spotify's a little butthurt, shall we say, by a company called TWiT.
So defensive.
They're very defensive, and they're kind of defensive in not a good way. TWiT published a report analyzing the state of artist payouts from music streaming services. This is from Apple World Today. So Spotify, this is for 2024 payouts per 1,000 streams, is the lowest, $3 per 1,000. Then YouTube, $4.80. Then Apple Music, more than twice as much as Spotify, $6.20. Amazon is the big winner, though, $8.80, almost 3 times as much as Spotify. Now, Spotify said, well, in fact, Spotify just today released, how much they've paid artists. Oh, we look at the billions we've paid artists. But what they don't say is how much per stream or how much. They just say total. We've paid billions.
And I think that their argument is that, and I don't usually come to the defense of Spotify very often, but I will say that the math I think is important to understand is that Amazon has a membership that a lot of people are kind of automatically paying.
Yeah,
I think, and no one uses it. I mean, I don't know anybody that uses Amazon Music.
I use it.
Okay, you use it. So there we go.
Well, I also use Apple Music and YouTube Music. Yeah. The only one I don't use is Spotify.
But how often do you use? I
used it
Amazon?
Yesterday because they have a lossless. They have a lossless version of all their music, which is really nice.
Okay, there you go. So
and they have some very nice playlists, and I don't trust Spotify's playlists because, as we know, Spotify lies or misrepresents what's on those playlists. If you ask for Bossa Nova dinner time, more than 3/4 of the artists will be phony artists, will be AI generated or commissioned artists, not real artists. So I think Spotify is not the best. I'm going to let you defend them.
No, I'm just defending the math.
But I'm not that crazy about them.
I greatly dislike Spotify.
Okay.
I think that they've, so I just want to make sure it was clear. I'm not a Spotify fan at all. I think that they've destroyed the podcasting market.
Yeah, that's another reason to hate them.
Yeah. And I don't think that they're good for artists. But I think that what you're looking at when you look at that number is what percentage of subscribers are using an ad-supported system versus a subscription-supported system. And as the subscriptions increase, it means that there's less people downloading, but everyone's always paying. And so I think that's why Spotify's at the bottom. YouTube's a little bit higher. And
yeah, Spotify says nobody calculates payment per stream, which I find hard to believe.
I think everybody calculates payment per stream. Yeah. Everybody thinks that way. They may not think that way, but every artist does.
In fact, they released a press release that says, no, we paid $10 billion to artists last year.
But again,
that's only because they're the biggest, right?
Well, and to get back to what you're saying is when they're commissioning artists and when they're commissioning AI driven audio, it definitely calls into question what the artists are getting. It's watering that down, and so and I think that Apple is getting good at that kind of value add to media. I think it's taking them a long time. I think Apple TV, again, as I said, what's interesting is with Netflix increase in cost, for the cost of Netflix, for one subscription of Netflix, you could have Apple Music, Apple Games, Apple Plus, Apple TV Plus, so Apple is actually, and when you watch those, you can see the money literally pouring out of the front of your screen from a production value perspective. I mean, it just looks so good. And so the thing is that they and the Apple Music is clearly, I don't know. I mean, I haven't listened to Amazon Music, but it's definitely better than Spotify. Like my daughter is like, she listens to Spotify for the recommendations, but she said I listen to everything else in Apple Music because it sounds better.
Spotify, and this is their blog post titled "For the Record." They say we help artists because we grow the pie, and it is true. They are by far the largest, with 500 million paying listeners. Oh no, I'm sorry. It says today there are more than 500 million paying listeners across all music streaming systems. Oh, a world with 1 billion paying listeners is a realistic goal we should collectively set. Well, yeah, I mean, if you were an artist, you might say, well, I kind of wish they'd buy the album. That might be a better goal from an artist's point of view. They basically say, look, you can't base it on the cost per stream because we've grown the audience base. Artists make more money from us, even if it might be, if you calculate it by stream, it might be lower.
Know. I mean, I think artists most artists are not making more money with Spotify than they used to make with CDs.
Yeah.
Right.
I think when they compare it, I'm like,
well, but we are in a different world, right?
Yeah,
those days are gone. I mean, as much as we might like them, Spotify. This is interesting, and I kind of like this, and this is kind of what the internet has promised: growing careers beyond the superstars. I've said for a long time, an equitable music system wouldn't have a half dozen people making billions and then hundreds of thousands making nothing. It would be more. I mean, they're wonderful musicians all over the place. So they say we estimate in 2014, at least 10,000 artists generated $10,000 a year on Spotify. Today, well over 10,000 artists generate over $100,000, a living wage, in other words, on Spotify. And I think that's fair.
I don't know any artist other than the very top ones that make 100,000. But maybe I've never.
Well, they say 10,000.
Most of the artists that are doing well are leveraging that into Patreon or other tools to generate revenue.
They're saying on Spotify per year from Spotify alone.
There you go.
So that's exactly what you would hope with the internet, was 100%. A democratization of it and a chance for more artists to make a living as opposed to making a killing.
I mean, I think that you're seeing that in the video market in the sense that there are many YouTubers that are making a solid living without, they're not making millions. They're just making enough to do what they love to do at a regular, at a rate that they can afford wherever they live. And I think that is that terrifies Hollywood. that people could just do it out of their house, and I think that the cost of production for a lot of this stuff has gone down. But again, I think with Spotify, it's really hit and miss. I just don't know a lot of artists that feel like they could live on what they make on Spotify. They usually look at it as a loss leader for their concerts. Live is what live and merch are what generally pay the bills for most music artists at this point.
You go down in the subway in New York City and there's some guy playing the fiddle like a genius or a guitar like a genius. And you think,
it's brutal.
There are so many talented musicians who aren't able to make a living. In the old days, it was much worse. You had to get a label, and then the label would take the cost of your studio time out of your revenue.
The dinners that they took you out to. The label would take the band out to dinner. That's coming out of the band.
To be fair, that was my deal with iHeartRadio. Also, for years was they would every time they took me out to dinner, I said, I'm paying for this, right? But that's fine. That's they make these deals, right? And if you're an artist and the only path to success is going through that, barrier, you're going to do it. Thank goodness that's not the only path anymore.